Think of someone famous you admire. What would you do if that person said or wrote something unfair? Would you speak up? Would you risk getting that person angry? Eliza Davis did.
It can be hard for any reader when their favorite author does something very wrong. I've never read Harry Potter, but I know how J.K. Rowling's words hurt and worry members and allies of the trans community. So they should everyone. That's just one example. I myself have been disappointed to learn the writer Alice Walker had anti-Semitic poems and statements. And perhaps you may have had a similar experience with someone whose work you admired. Whether that person attacked a minority like yourself or a minority in another group. I'm a teacher, so I see many troublesome authors' books passed around among kids and educators. Do I want to shout out, "Hey, stop reading those"? No, of course not. As a reader, as a Jew, as a Jewish reader, I don't believe in censoring or banning, not to mention burning, books. Do I want to defend those problematic authors? No, again, of course not. I want to challenge their ideas and even challenge the defenders who support those ideas. Why? Well, Charles Dickens wrote, "A loving heart is the truest wisdom." And I agree. I think if you do try to love, your heart can be an energy and education to guide anyone to do the most natural thing in our universe. Change. That brings me to this week's book, Dear Mr. Dickens, written by Nancy Churnin and illustrated by Bethany Stancliffe. It's a simple storybook, but it's up to the task of telling a true tale, of interpreting a lesson out of it. The main character, Eliza Davis, is an enormous fan of the writer Charles Dickens, the most famous author of her time. She eagerly awaits his next installment of any of his stories. And by the way, I love the pictures and the words showing the kids how readers used to wait by the week or month for weekly magazines for part of the book rather than the whole one novel coming out at once. That is so cool to see. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Anyway, back to the main point. Many people love Dickens for different reasons. He's funny, scary, he can be horrible, he can be noble, and altogether memorable. The drip off your tongue dialogue and the what happens next sensation to the characters you care about. He's glorious at that. And yet, within all that entertainment, the reason Eliza loves Dickens so much is he uses his writing to help others. As history changed in the Victorian age, Dickens was a part of that becoming. I'm going to quote something. The story says, when his readers were moved to tears of tales for families struggling in desperate, dirty conditions, they gave what they could to charities, as did Eliza. Some goodness was able to thrive because of Dickens' writings and attitudes. Eliza was one of those people who was influenced by her favorite author to give to others. She also recognized that he felt care for people in different lots of life. He gave the compassion for struggles of both poor and rich. And as the most famous writer in England, he of course knew the latter, but he also knew the senior. A dark secret that Charles Dickens kept from almost everyone was that he himself had had horrific experiences being poor, of being torn from education, of being worked to the bone almost every day of his childhood. I'm sure it haunted him all his life. But how wonderful that he turned it into something creative, not just to survive himself, but to truly help others. Eliza believed Dickens had Dickens had a heart as big as England, overflowing with compassion for everyone. So the story starts rising its action at the publication of Oliver Twist. Eliza eagerly buys the book, and she loves it at first. Then comes chapter 8. She reads about the old shriveled Jew who tries to teach Oliver to steal. Eliza is Jewish. Okay. Is this a case of anti-Semitism, or did Dickens write a villain who just happened to be Jewish? She reads on as Fagin is described as selfish, dishonest, ugly, and cruel. Dickens keeps using the word the Jew, the Jew, the Jew, the Jew. I'm moved by this tender illustration right here. You can feel her looking at the book as Dickens' Prejudice hurts her heart. And you don't have to be a historian to know the world has never been a safe place for Jewish people. 1860s England was no exception. Jews couldn't vote, they couldn't work at certain jobs that Christians could, they couldn't study or teach at universities. And of course, there's hate crimes. Unfortunately, the last one hasn't gone away. Anti-Semitism continues to flourish around the world. I have experienced it myself among strangers and friends. I've practiced it too when trying to fit in. And I've mourned and feared because of those who lost their lives before, and certainly during my time. Eliza, of course, is aware of the terrible words, danger, and the pain for what Jews suffer and could suffer from it. Now, she's witnessed how Dickens' words have encouraged people to do good. So she reasons such hate as that could encourage them to do bad. She wants him to treat her people fairly, so others will too. I'm going to read another quote. Someone had to speak up, but who? Eliza wasn't famous or powerful, but she had the same three things that Charles Dickens had: a pen, paper, and something to say. She sat down and wrote a letter. And the rest of the story revolves around Charles Dickens and Eliza's correspondence. The pages show Dickens' written reactions to each of her letters, as well as his unwritten actions in his own life. You may have figured out which way the story goes, but I was actually surprised on how far it went. Now, I told you Dickens knew what it was like to be poor, even though no one realized his first-hand experience during his lifetime. But can he care? Can he get the pain of an experience he knows nothing about? An experience like anti-Semitism? I'm not going to spoil the book, but I do urge you to read it. Whether you're a Dickens fan, whether you've written anti-Semitism, whether you're a Jewish reader, whether you're someone you admire did something that was wrong with their work, whether you know or you don't know that you should care about people different from you. This book may get you thinking about the power of writing, the power of representation, and the power of change. I often joke how I'm glad we know almost nothing about Shakespeare as a man. We have his work, but not his life. Dickens left us his work, and though he was so private about certain parts of his life, much has been revealed since his death. I may use that joke about Shakespeare, but I've actually never avoided learning about an author because I'm afraid their dark side will ruin their work. I wrestle all the time, not whether I can read or share a troubled author, but how to. This book gave me not just hope in human decency, but in human responsibility. We know already that Eliza is responsible enough to speak up, to use the power of the pen. I also tell my students there's something bittersweet when you find out you're wrong, because it gives you the chance to change, to see the past, heal the present, tone for the future. When you read this story, you'll see whether or not Dickens took that chance of responsibility. I hope this wonderful book makes any reader not just hold artists' work responsible, but hold ourselves responsible in how we respond to it. The book can help children and adults see what we can do. Instead of blocking out the admittance of when we're being wrong or when our favorite of ours is wrong, which is very popular practice in history and certainly now, you can be as good a friend, as good a master, as good a man for the people that are being hurt. You can have a becoming as many of the most memorable characters in all of literature did. You can have what Dickens called a loving heart. Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm back. It's been a long summer. So much has happened that I haven't been recording or reading all the books I should be doing. But I'm back at school now, teaching, and I'm on a regular schedule, and I'm hoping I can do at least one video a week, probably no more. But if you recommend to me any children's books, YA novels, classics, maybe I'll do a Dickens one day, I will definitely consider it and hopefully make a video soon about the book. Thank you so much for listening.